More than 5 million years ago, the major Hawaiian islands began to form on the floor of the Pacific Ocean. As the oceanic crust rode over a hot spot deep within the earth, molten rock oozed from fissures, hardened, and gradually built massive mountains whose bases lie as much as 16,000 feet below sea level. As the Pacific Plate moved northwestward over the hot spot, countless eruptions over millions of years formed the Hawaiian archipelago, a chain of 20 islands and atolls stretching almost 1,500 miles across the central Pacific Ocean. The 8 major islands vary greatly in age and appearance. Kauai, nearly 5 million years old, is the oldest of Hawaii's 7 inhabited islands. Wind, rain, and the effects of man have eroded its land surface, such that few traces of its original volcanic topography remain. To the southeast are the progressively younger islands of Oahu, Molokai, Lanai, and Maui, whose huge dormant volcano, Haleakala, comprises more than half the landmass of the island. Farther eastward, the often snow-capped summits of the island of Hawaii rise above the trade wind clouds to heights of more than 13,000 feet above sea level. Known as the Big Island, its surface lavas are all less than 1 million years old, making it the youngest as well as the largest of the Hawaiian Islands. Its 5 separate volcanoes have grown together to form a landmass exceeding that of all the other islands combined. Kohala, the oldest of the 5, last erupted about 60,000 years ago. It is densely vegetated and dissected by 4 immense stream-cut valleys. Its massive neighbor to the southeast, Mauna Kea, is now presumed dormant, having last erupted 3,500 years ago. Farther south is Hualalai, whose summit rises above the resort coast of Kona. Although in a late stage of its development, it is still considered active. Its last eruption in 1801 sent voluminous flows down to the sea only 8 miles from the present-day town of Kailua. The 2 southernmost volcanoes of Hawaii are also the most active. Mauna Loa last erupted in 1984, sending lava flows within 4 miles of the city of Hilo. Kilauea volcano, nestled against the southeastern slope of Mauna Loa, is one of the most active volcanoes in the world, having erupted over 30 times in the last 40 years. The current eruptions of Kilauea typify the developing stages of a Hawaiian volcano when much of its land building occurs. Each of the volcanoes in the Hawaiian chain, whether active or long extinct, at one time exhibited the eruptive processes seen at Kilauea today. Eruptions at Kilauea occur either at the summit caldera or from vents along 2 major rift zones on the southwestern and eastern flanks of the mountain. Both summit and rift zone eruptions are fed from a relatively shallow magma chamber about 2 miles beneath the summit. This chamber is in turn supplied by the much deeper hot spot about 36 miles below. Here, solid rock melts and begins rising towards the surface. Traveling underground, this fluid rock is called magma. It is only called lava once it appears at the surface. The most recent series of eruptions at Kilauea began before dawn on January 3, 1983. When a curtain of fire broke out along a 5-mile stretch in the middle of the East Rift Zone. Over the next 3.5 years, 47 high fountain eruptions occurred from a vent on the original fissure. The eruptions were characterized by short periods of vigorous lava fountaining that rarely lasted more than a few days. Over a period of time, Material thrown out by these fountains piled up around the vent, building a cinder and spatter cone 800 feet high. This cone is called Pu'u'o'o, or Hill of the O'o, after an extinct bird that once frequented the forests in the area. Lava from these eruptions flowed as far as 4 miles downslope from the vent, destroying homes and roads in Royal Gardens, a rural subdivision. In July 1986, a new fissure opened up about 2 miles downrift from Pu'u'o'o, and the eruption underwent a dramatic shift in character. Episodic high fountaining ceased, and a period of less dramatic but considerably more destructive activity began. The new vent, Kupayanaha, has since erupted more than 450 million cubic yards of lava, enough to cover a football field to the depth of over 50 miles. The lava flowed down the steep southern flank of the volcano, first reaching the sea in November 1986. In the process, the flows covered thousands of acres of native rainforests, portions of several subdivisions, a highway, and numerous historical sites. Residents evacuated the area as the flows slowly advanced, leaving behind homes, gardens, and farms that were eventually engulfed by lava. In early June 1989, westerly flows permanently cut off Royal Gardens and began a slow but unrelenting advance on Waha'ula Heiau and Visitor Center. As the lava closed in on the Visitor Center, National Park Service firefighters sought to divert its advance by spraying the front with thousands of gallons of water. At first, the method appeared to be successful when a flow was stopped in the parking lot just a few yards from the building. On June 22nd, flows circled around from the east, eventually pushing a steadily advancing front under the building. When the water ran out late in the afternoon, fire quickly destroyed the Waha'ula Visitor Center. Although the flows attracted a steady stream of viewers, many people were saddened by the destruction of a landscape so rich in cultural history. Although the Waha'ula Heiau survived, Punalu'u, also known as Queen's Bath, a natural pool and long-time local landmark, was among the sites consumed. In February 1990, lava flows began moving downslope toward the coastal town of Kalapana. On April 4th, lava claimed its first victim. Over the next 5 months, the flows moved slowly through the town and along the coast, eventually covering the famous black sand beach at Kaimu. By October, the whole bay was filled in. Lava continued to flow into the area in 1991, and by February had destroyed all but 6 of the 111 homes that had stood there just a year earlier. Since this eruption began, over $100 million worth of property, including more than 175 homes, has been lost. Hawaiian volcanoes are renowned for their approachability. The recent prolonged activity at Kilauea has provided many unique opportunities for detailed observations by scientists from the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. The characteristics of Hawaiian volcanism that make it so readily accessible are consequences of special properties of Hawaiian magmas. Generally, they are quite fluid and lack the large amounts of dissolved gas present in continental magmas, like those feeding Mount St. Helens. While explosive events are generally absent in Hawaii, lava may still be ejected from the vent with considerable force. Towering fountains result from the pressure behind a constricted flow and the expansion of gases within the rising magma. Great quantities of molten material can be thrown into the air during episodes of high fountaining. The lava expands and becomes frothy upon leaving the vent, forming products such as ash, pumice, cinder, and Pele's hair, which can drift downwind for great distances. Magma can also well to the surface much more quietly. Over a period of extended gentle activity, lava may pool above the vent, eventually forming an active lava lake such as Kupaianaha. In this case, lava can erupt quietly at the vent because much of the gas is released from the magma as it flows beneath Pu'u'o'o. Lava lakes develop as levees build up around a vent, preventing the lava from flowing freely over the ground and instead forcing it to pool. This levee is being built by spattering around the edge of the lava lake. Though partially hardened, the lava pond crust still appears amazingly flexible. At times, the level of the lake is high enough for lava to spill out. Over a period of months, repeated overflows from the lake form a broad, growing mound called a lava shield. Small lava shields are miniature versions of the massive mountains that form the Hawaiian chain. Lava on the surface of the lake cools to form a crust, much like the skin that forms on the surface of a cooling pot of soup. The movement of the underlying magma breaks this crust into plates that slide apart, scrape past one another, and collide in a complex array of motions. Many of these crustal movements are similar to the much larger motions of continental and oceanic plates, known as global plate tectonics. Here, for example, where magma flows to the surface, adjacent plates are forced apart and new crust forms along incandescent seams that zigzag across the lake. These seams resemble the immense spreading ridges that traverse the floors of the world's great oceans. Upwelling magma from these zones cools to form new oceanic crust. Destruction of the plates by subduction occurs when they collide head-on, causing one plate to slide beneath the other. On a global scale, similar processes are involved where the Pacific Ocean plate meets and passes beneath the South American plate along the west coast of the continent. Large volcanoes occur at these boundaries due to melting of the ocean crust as it is subducted into the Earth's interior. Many complex movements of lava lake crust have no global counterparts. Here, for example, magma wells to the surface to form an upper plate. As the lava thickens and cools, it presses down on the original crust, which breaks under the additional weight. As the broken piece quickly sinks, it forces up a new bulbous mass of incandescent lava. Small but spectacular fountains play across the surface of the lava lake due to the continual release of the dissolved gases in the molten rock. The most common gases present in Hawaiian lavas are carbon dioxide, compounds of sulfur, and water. Since much of the sulfur and carbon dioxide escapes at Kilauea's summit, water vapor is the predominant gas in lavas erupted from the rift zones. The collection, expansion, and release of gases near the surface of the lava lake results in spectacular splashing and spattering. Lava continually enters Kupaya Naha from the bottom of the lake and exits as much as a day or two later through a large underground tube on its south wall. Lava emerging from this tube begins its downhill journey as a lava flow. Two very different kinds of lava flows cover the surface of Kilauea. The smooth or ropey skin variety, called Pahoehoe, is typically more fluid than the clinkery surface type known as A'a. As Pahoehoe flows move across the terrain, they cool and lose gas. Thus, lava that was once very fluid becomes very viscous and may change to A'a. The transition from Pahoehoe to A'a is also influenced by the speed of the flow. The greater the velocity, the more likely it is to become A'a. The lava behaves much like taffy. When pulled slowly, it stretches smoothly. When pulled rapidly, it snaps into pieces. Once lava becomes A'a, it cannot revert to Pahoehoe. Though lava flowing down the same channel may remain Pahoehoe if its velocity decreases. Such a decrease may occur when A'a flows move from steep to gentle slopes, or when the flow fronts stagnate, creating a dam behind which lava may pool and eventually overflow. Despite its outward rubbly appearance, the interior of an A'a flow is very dense. Here, the massive glowing core is continually exposed as this 10-foot-high A'a flow advances. The front moves like a pile of rubble being pushed forward by a bulldozer, while loose material shoved to the sides confines the channel feeding the flow front. While Pahoehoe flows may be temporarily diverted by natural barriers or even stone walls, A'a flows advance unrelentingly, overrunning everything in their paths. At times, pieces of channel wall break loose and are carried downstream, gradually enlarging like snowballs as they roll and tumble down the channelways. These accretionary lava balls are often perched along the edges of the flow or at the top of the levees, stranded there by sudden surges of lava through the channel. Other accretionary lava balls may be transported to the front of the flow, far from their point of origin. Some flows are speckled with hundreds of these lava balls. Channels form in Pahoehoe flows because the flow margins cool more rapidly than the fast-moving center. Overflows resulting from surges or blockages build up the channel margins, contain the flow, and elevate it above the surrounding landscape. The surface of these stable lava channels may crust over, eventually forming lava tubes. The thin crust gradually thickens into a more substantial roof several feet thick. Because rock is a poor conductor of heat, these tubes insulate the lava flowing within them and allow temperatures in excess of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit to be maintained for many miles. Tubes originating at Kupaya Naha extend more than 7 miles downhill to the ocean. The ability of tube-fed Pahoehoe to travel over much greater distances than surface flows has been an important factor in the seaward growth and gentle topographic profiles of Hawaii's volcanoes. Lava can be seen traveling through subterranean tubes when portions of the tube ceiling or wall collapse, forming a skylight or window. These openings act as vents for searing hot gases released from the flowing lava. They also allow volcanologists to collect samples and measure the temperature of the flow. A unique type of Pelly's hair may be seen at skylights, where bubbly lava stretches to spin long, thin strands of volcanic glass. Differing from the needle-like variety formed by lava fountains, its delicately interwoven texture resembles cotton candy. When channels break open or lava tubes become clogged, the confined lava stream within is forced out onto the surface. As the flowing lava breaks up its own earlier formed crust, pieces are rafted along. Curved, ropey folds are common on the surfaces of Pahoehoe flows. These structures are formed as the fluid interior of the flow pushes its cooling skin into folds and wrinkles. Such surfaces are frequently seen where a tongue of lava reaches the base of a slope or is blocked by an obstruction. The front of this flow rolls forward, much like the tread of a tank. As the flows pass through forested areas, they surround trees which burn away, leaving their impression preserved as molds within the hardened lava. The combustion of plant roots and other organic material forms methane gas that collects underground. After dark, the burning gases can be seen eerily rising from incandescent cracks in the cooling flow. Pockets of methane frequently become concentrated to explosive pressures under flow margins. Powerful explosions can occur without warning and are a considerable threat to the unwary. Upon reaching the coast, the lava enters the sea and the formation of new land begins. This is a complex process, influenced not only by the nature of the flows, but also by the submarine topography and the forces of the ocean. When lava meets water, processes ranging from gentle boiling to spectacular steam explosions can result. Here, gouts of spatter and huge sheets and bubbles of volcanic glass, called limu o pele, are blown into the air. Where the ocean is calm, small flows move slowly but steadily forward between waves. Generally, lava gently entering the ocean is insulated by its cooled surface layer, thus reducing the potential for violent interaction. However, if lava moves quickly into deep water and forms a submarine tube, large steam explosions may occur after waves splash into the tube mouth. Spatter and chunks of tube wall may be blown high into the air. Rivulets of lava flowing over cliffs and to the surf are quickly broken up and dispersed. Black sand produced from wave-shattered lava accumulates in pockets and beaches along the coast. Clouds of steam rise as the waves splash water into tube mouths and over the hot lava flow. Heavy surf pounding against the growing shoreline may shatter and tear the Pahoehoe as it emerges from tubes in the tidal zone. The material tumbles down slope with the retreating waves to form an underwater pile of rubble or talus. As flows move out atop this pile, they build a lava bench. Though the benches may appear to be safely approachable, many are often very unstable and dangerous to walk on. Some benches grow to eventually form new dry land, while others collapse violently back into the sea, leaving behind severed lava tubes and a boiling ocean. In this instance, a 2-foot diameter fire hose flow shoots out nearly 20 feet from the cliff face, precipitating large explosions in the shallow water. Although the land-building processes that occur above sea level are the most readily observed, those that take place below the surface build the foundation for the new land. Here, about 30 feet underwater, a tube-fed Pahoehoe flow advances down the talus, forming pillow lavas. Today, in the saga of the Hawaiian Islands, the lava has prevailed, constructing more than 100 acres of new land since this eruption began. But in time, subsidence and erosion will prevail, slowly returning these magnificent islands to the sea. Although Kilauea volcano is estimated to be as much as 500,000 years old, the surface of the mountain that is above sea level covers about 540 square miles and is made up of lava that is almost entirely younger than 1,000 years. The processes illustrated here have played a primary role in the formation of its landscapes and will continue to do so far into the future.
Streams of molten rock flowing down a black and barren landscape. The dramatic scene is captivating. Explorers, both past and present, have been drawn to these rare active volcanoes. Through careful observation, much has been learned about how lava flows and the fantastic forms it leaves behind. Ancient Hawaiians, living among some of the world's most active volcanoes, first noticed that the surfaces of lava flows tended to be of two types. They called the smooth, ropey flows pahoehoe, and the jagged, rubbly flows a'a. Today, scientists around the world use these Hawaiian words to describe basaltic lava flows and their solidified forms. While most active lava flows in the United States are confined to Hawaii, there are many large lava fields scattered throughout the American West. Multiple eruptions of both pahoehoe and a'a over thousands of years have made these harsh volcanic landscapes. A'a flows look like immense piles of red-hot glowing rubble bulldozing their way downslope and crushing anything in their path. The top of the flow is loose rubble that cascades off the sides and front, obscuring the molten core. The size and power of these flows are indications that the interior is very stiff and resistant to movement. The height of a'a fronts varies greatly. Slow-moving large flows may pile up to heights of 50 feet or more. Smaller a'a flows can be just 5 to 10 feet thick, with surging fronts that are even thinner. A'a flows advance a lot like the tread of a tank. As the molten core deforms downslope, the cooler rubble on top tumbles off the front and is run over by the lava flow. While the lower rubble layer doesn't actually move, it creates a sandwich-like structure in the cool lava flows, rubble on the top and bottom, with a very dense interior that was once the molten core. The incandescent core exposed at the front of the flow cools rapidly. Blocks of this stiffer, more solidified material calve like ice from an advancing glacier as the flow moves steadily downhill. This jagged rubble, called clinker, forms when pieces of the core are pushed to the outside and are torn from the face of the flow. The pieces develop sharp spines as they are pulled from the sticky core. A'a clinker also forms on the surface of slow-moving channels, just behind the spreading flow front. Upslope, the lava rivers are smoother and faster, but clots of solidifying lava can be seen bobbing within the channel. Farther away from the advancing front, lava flowing within the channel may have a very fluid appearance. Lava balls form when blocks of channel wall fall into the lava stream. As they are swept along, the lava balls roll and tumble and become coated with layers of lava. Big pieces of the channel wall can dam the lava river and cause overflows. Lava balls are often found stranded by overflows on the edges of channels or rafted along on a'a fans near the flow front. The fronts of most a'a flows advance about 1 mile per hour. Really large a'a flows on steep slopes can move faster than 5 miles per hour. Smaller a'a flows on shallow slopes may move less than a few hundred yards in an hour. There's a big difference between the slow advance of flow fronts and the higher speed of lava moving in channels. Lava in AA channels typically travels more than 10 times faster than the front. AA fronts fan out as they move downhill, pouring lava over a much broader area than the channel. This causes the lava to slow and cool more quickly. The lava that spreads out to the edges of the fan stagnates, forming levees that confine the advancing channel. On shallow slopes, the fans broaden and branch into multiple lobes. Large eruptions on flat ground may produce huge sheets of AA with no distinct channels. Pahoehoe lava looks so different from AA that it's hard to believe the two types are related. The missing link is a transitional form called slabby pahoehoe. It's created when pieces of once smooth pahoehoe crust are ripped and twisted, tumbling off the front as the flows advance. Slabby pahoehoe flows generally advance at about the same speed as similar-size AA flows. Sometimes the fronts of slabby flows more closely resemble AA as they creep forward. The molten lava can appear to be very thick and sticky in parts of the front. A closer look into the interior of a slabby flow shows that the fluid can behave a lot like silly putty, being pulled slowly into long strings. The fronts of the flows bob and heave as pieces of crust temporarily slow the advancing fluid. Slabby pahoehoe, like AA, exerts a lot of force on objects in its path. Here, a 10-foot-high tree is pushed over like a twig. At times, the fronts of slabby flows are amazingly thin and fluid, closely resembling normal pahoehoe. These fronts are rapidly overrun by the jumbled mass of the flow, which is 5 to 10 feet thick. Jagged slabby pahoehoe crust are preserved on many prehistoric lava flows. Real pahoehoe appears very fluid. A thin, plasticky crust forming on the cooled outside of toes helps hold their shape and can fold into miniature ropes. Bubbles within the lava are stretched and torn as the pahoehoe toes expand and move forward. This stretching is limited to the outer skin, which is about 1/16 of an inch thick on fluid Hawaiian pahoehoe. Many toes budding from active fronts merge to form larger toes. Just behind the front, an immobile crust forms on slow-moving pahoehoe. As the flow inflates, chips of glass pop off the expanding surface. Ropes form where faster-moving lava slows down, causing the thin, flexible skin to pile up and wrinkle. As the flow continues to push forward, the ropes get folded into complex, twisted forms. Ropes like these are preserved in many of the lava flows found within the western United States and are good evidence that these flows advanced as slow-moving pahoehoe. On faster-moving pahoehoe flows, the crust may become detached and get completely spun around on the surface of the flow. Crust that gets torn as the flow advances quickly remains thin and flexible, unlike the large broken plates found in slabby pahoehoe flows. The fronts of advancing Pahoehoe flows are generally less than a foot high, but can grow with time and continued lava input. This sped-up sequence shows how the thin leading edge advances. A flexible crust forms as the flow slows. It immediately begins to inflate like a balloon, filling with more lava. Time-lapse shots of a Pahoehoe flow advancing show how lava toes bud and crust over. The entire crusted surface inflates together. Incoming lava trapped beneath the crust pushes it upward. If the lava toes do not coalesce at the front, small tubes form that cool quickly and clog. Localized swelling of these narrow flow lobes produces what's known as tumuli. These flows are called hummocky Pahoehoe for their irregular lumpy surfaces. Hummocky Pahoehoe flows are caused by low lava supplies or lava moving over uneven terrain, both of which keep toes from coalescing. Some Pahoehoe flows advance as a series of long, thin fingers, but still inflate together to form a single-level sheet flow. Behind the active front, the Pahoehoe inflates several feet due to the development of a rigid crust that remains at the spot where it formed. Here, a Pahoehoe flow filling a small depression grew nearly 6 feet high in just 4 hours. It advances as a series of lobes that inflate to become part of the main flow. By quickly developing a solid crust, Pahoehoe flows can preserve heat and advance great distances. Most Pahoehoe flows tend to advance very slowly, covering only a few hundred feet per hour. Fluid Pahoehoe sheet flows in Hawaii can inflate 15 to 20 feet. While this may seem like a lot, stickier continental sheet flows have inflated as much as 60 to 80 feet. Edges and even fronts of these flows are often mistaken for collapse features. Inflated flow margins may crack and begin to leak lava. Extreme pressure buildup fractures the entire flow front, pushing aside large blocks as a new flow lobe emerges. This is how many sheet flows advance. Lava that gushes from these new flow fronts is very fluid and forms extremely thin flows. The pressure inside the inflating flow can be so high that water is redissolved into the lava. When the lava breaks to the surface, the pressure is released and the water vapor effectively boils out of the lava, creating softball-sized bubbles. As a lava flow inflates, the outer cooled crust expands and cracks. Pahoehoe flows are riddled with these expansion cracks, which can get very wide in large flows. More regularly spaced cracks form in the slow-cooling interiors of thick lava flows. The evenly spaced cracks form prismatic towers called columnar joints. Erosion in older volcanic fields exposes horizontal layers with stacks of 20 to 40 foot thick inflated Pahoehoe flows. Immense inflated flows, 100 to 200 feet thick, can be seen along the Columbia River. These Pahoehoe flows covered much of Washington state 16 million years ago. When Pahoehoe lava moves through a forest, it doesn't push the trees over like an aa flow, but simply coats the trunks with lava that freezes against the much colder tree. Eventually, the trunk burns through, and the tree topples onto the surrounding flow, where it can form an impression in the lava. These two slightly different processes create vertical and horizontal tree molds. Tree molds are typically only found near the edges of lava flows, where they've not been covered. When trees are engulfed by fast-moving channels, the leaves and outer bark immediately burst into flames. The tree itself may remain standing for several hours, causing lava to pile and chill against the uphill side of the trunk. When the lava finally drains away, strange-looking pillars are left behind, often still encasing pieces of the tree. These lava trees are usually found very close to vents. Another bizarre feature seen on Pahoehoe lavas are hornitos. These tower or beehive shapes are built by small eruptions of spatter, far from any primary vent. Hornitos may form either by strong degassing from cracks in lava tubes and flows, or by the buildup of extreme pressure inside a lava flow. These hornitos formed on a flow that was forced to travel upslope. When Pahoehoe flows first pour over cliffs, they form delicate column structures called draperies. Lava stalactites form from the top and slowly grow downward to join the pile of drippings building up from below. Draperies are rarely preserved, as they are commonly buried by later flows. Pillow basalts form where lava erupts underwater or enters a large body of water, such as the ocean or a lake. Pillow basalts are the underwater equivalent of Pahoehoe, but produce much more spherical shapes due to the added buoyancy of the water. During emplacement in shallow water, much of the lava shatters and buries pillows with glassy black sand. Pahoehoe flows and Aa flows have strikingly different appearances, yet are often found forming together in the same lava field. Two things determine the form lava will take: the viscosity or stickiness of the lava, and the shear stress or force applied to the lava that makes it move. Viscosity is simply how resistant a fluid is to flowing. The higher the viscosity, the harder it is to get a fluid to flow. Aa is generally much more viscous than Pahoehoe. Water is a low viscosity fluid that flows very easily. It offers little resistance going over these waterfalls. Lava pouring over falls also gives the impression of a very low viscosity fluid. However, even the fluid lava within Pahoehoe toes is much stickier than water. The viscosity of lava is largely determined by its temperature and water content. The higher these are, the less viscous and more fluid the lava is. Honey behaves a lot like lava. Warm honey or honey mixed with water flows more easily than cold, sticky honey. Lava inside toes that have been cooling for only a few minutes is already considerably more viscous. It quickly becomes tacky and forms spines and needles when it is torn apart, very similar to the rough surfaces of Aa. As lava continues to cool, crystals and bubbles begin to grow in the liquid. Hot fluid lava flows with few crystals and bubbles, as seen in this microscopic view, form very thin toes, often only an inch or two thick. The outer crust is very dense due to the lack of bubbles. As a result, they strongly reflect light, giving them a metallic or steely blue appearance. As the flow advances, gas bubbles continue to form and grow, making the remaining lava more viscous. Eventually, so many bubbles form that they begin to bump into each other, adding to the viscosity of slow-moving toes. The rock it forms can look almost spongy. Bubble-rich toes are several times thicker than dense toes. The stretched tubular bubbles allow light to pass through the glassy skin, giving the surface a bronze tint. As the flows continue to cool, more crystals form and the viscosity increases greatly. Many of the bubbles escape, and the remaining ones coalesce into larger bubbles. Bubbles in the interior of these flows are elongated rather than spherical. Stretched and torn bubbles at the surface give these viscous Pahoehoe flows a spiny texture. Slow-moving crystal-rich lava tends to form spiny Pahoehoe crusts. If the lava moves faster, the crystals in the lava collide and bind, causing the crust to tear and aa to form. The tearing force, called shear stress, plays an important role in determining whether aa or Pahoehoe crust forms. How much lava is coming out of the ground, called the effusion rate, how high it goes in the air, and how steep a slope it flows down all influence the shear stress and the type of lava formed. Lava moving rapidly down a steep slope or in a wide channel is being stressed much more than lava moving slowly on flat ground. The faster lava flows, the more it is being torn, and the more likely it is to become aa. The chemical composition of lava, especially silica content, strongly affects viscosity. Continental basaltic lava flows tend to have higher silica contents and higher viscosities than most Hawaiian lavas. Higher initial viscosities explain why coarse, spiny surfaces are more common on continental Pahoehoe flows, and why some lavas that erupted onto flat ground produced aa instead of Pahoehoe. The change from Pahoehoe crust to aa crust as a flow moves down steep slopes and cools is well known. It can easily be seen along this small flow, which initially emerged as Pahoehoe and is now forming aa at its front. Aa and Pahoehoe flows are defined by their crust, which cannot change once it is formed. However, the fluid lava carried by the channel has neither form and can change continuously depending on viscosity and shear stress. Some aa flows that slow down when they reach flat ground actually produce Pahoehoe flows. Other stagnated aa flows can leak viscous, spiny Pahoehoe. This aa flow gradually underwent a change to slabby Pahoehoe and finally to Pahoehoe as it moved onto flat ground. The crust growing over the channel is keeping the lava hot and fluid, so Pahoehoe can form at the front of the lava flow. Basaltic eruptions begin as fissures, which erupt enormous amounts of lava. Because the volume of lava is widely distributed over a half-mile or more of vents, many of the flows move slowly and initially form Pahoehoe. As the fissure eruption progresses, small spatter cones and ridges, called spatter ramparts, build along the sides of the vents. If the eruption lasts long enough, generally a few weeks or months, the site of eruptive activity will localize to a single vent. Forcing the lava out through a single narrow vent creates a nozzle effect, like putting your finger over the end of a garden hose. Sporadic eruptions from these narrow vents create spectacular high fountains that can spray lava up to 2,000 feet into the air. When lava ponds within the cone, pahoehoe flows typically form near the vent. As they move away from the vent and cool or encounter steeper slopes, the pahoehoe flows change to aa flows. After many high fountain events, Hawaiian eruptions produce large craterless cones when lighter material piles up on the downwind side of the vent. At craters of the moon, many of the vents were formed by Hawaiian-style fountaining and are marked by large asymmetric hills of cinder with no apparent crater or vent. Sustained eruptions with low effusion rates form gently sloping shield volcanoes. Repeated overflows of pahoehoe coat and recoat the surface of the shields. Overflows within a mile or so of shields and lava lakes produce another variant of lava called shelly pahoehoe. These flows have a relatively thick yet remarkably flexible crust that detaches from the underlying molten lava and folds into billowy forms with hollow interiors. Shelly pahoehoe lava is full of bubbles and is more than 50% gas by volume. Gas escaping from the molten interior creates even more hollow space beneath the buckled crust. On flatter ground, shelly pahoehoe can pile up into thick stacks of flat crustal plates. Repeated eruptions of fluid lava can build enormous shield volcanoes. Mauna Loa, the world's largest volcano, rises nearly 30,000 feet above the surrounding seafloor. Eruptions of more viscous basaltic lava produce pulsating strombolian explosions. The higher viscosity is due to either the original magma composition or to cooling in the magma chamber prior to eruption. Gases cannot easily escape from the sticky lava and accumulate until large bubbles form and burst from the vent. Strombolian eruptions are powerful and make a lot more fine ash than Hawaiian eruptions. The individual blasts toss dense cinder and bombs, which are not strongly affected by regional wind patterns. Strombolian eruptions construct beautiful circular cones with central craters. Some cinder cones have a distinct horseshoe shape that is produced when cinder lands on the active lava river exiting the vent and is swept away. Strombolian eruptions strongly favor the formation of aa flows, like these large sheets of aa surrounding Bandera crater. Hidden beneath the surface of many lava flows are long, sinuous caves called lava tubes. When the flows are active, the tubes are incandescent and filled by a stream of lava. Drained lava tubes and old flows make caves that are often easy to explore because of their high ceilings and gently sloping floors. The formation of tubes allows lava to travel long distances while remaining very fluid. The roof is an excellent insulator, allowing lava to maintain temperatures in excess of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit over many miles of travel. Lava tubes commonly start out as open channels in either Pahoehoe or A'a flows. The channels begin to cool from the sides. A thin crust of rock will gradually grow out from the edges across the channel, much like ice on a river. Rafts of crust can also clog up the center of the narrowing channel, helping to make a solid roof. Here we're watching the flexible crust growing across the surface of a channel in fast motion. Bits of viscous lava catch and stick to the edges and bottom of the crust. Crustal growth rates vary greatly on different channels, depending on the speed of the flow. Faster flows tend to tear up the crust as it forms, so it takes longer to grow. Smaller, slower flows may develop a thicker but still flexible crust. It rolls up along the sides and in the center, eventually solidifying into an arch with a ropey textured surface. Early on, the roof is only inches thick, but it continues to thicken from underneath as more lava catches and cools. Eventually, thickening crust can constrict the flow of lava beneath it. This causes lava to back up inside and burst out in places. These new surface flows then bury the rest of the tube, making the roof even thicker. After a tube has been sealed over for several weeks, the lava river inside begins to thermally erode the ground beneath it. Lava is so hot that the underlying rock will soften and partially melt, allowing it to be scraped away by the powerful force of the flowing lava. Small ledges on the walls of tubes record the lava levels as erosion proceeds downward. The shape of a lava tube depends a lot on how long it was active. Original channels tend to be wide and shallow, but ultimately erosion carves them deeper. Tubes that were active for only a few days tend to leave behind wide and shallow caves, while those active for more than a few weeks become larger caves with a rounded profile. Some lava tubes have a keyhole shape that shows both the original wide channel at the top and a deeper, narrower bottom. Lava tube systems vary from simple to complex. The amount of interweaving is a result of the original paths of the surface flows. Lava channels may be straight, meandering, or even braided. While not all of the channels will form long-lived tubes, those that do can create branching underground caves. The roof of a lava tube can become weakened and collapse, forming a skylight and allowing cooler air into the tube. Lava passing under skylights cools and forms new crust. thick ledges emerge from tube walls. With time, an inner roof forms beneath large skylights, building multiple levels along sections of a tube. Partial blockages of tubes force lava to the surface as new flows, creating complicated systems of stacked lava tubes. The overflows can even re-enter the original tube system farther downslope. Intense heat inside the tubes creates a wide range of textures by melting the outer layers of the walls and roof. Molten rock may form drips from the ceiling or ooze slowly down the walls. Release of pressure in the tube, which happens when a block tube breaks open or drains, drives water-rich melt from the tube walls, extruding little buds. Molten lava forced from the ceiling forms soda straw stalactites. These hollow tubes form as the lava reacts with hot air to form a metallic crust. The straw grows with each drip of melt. Splashing lava at the base of falls can freeze into drips and lava sickles along the walls. Shark's tooth textures, seen here, are also drips left behind when the lava level was higher. Other stalactites are formed by lava that catches on walls or drags along projections from the wall or roof. Rocks falling into the lava stream or brought up during the eruption may get swept away and roll around in the lava. They are often left behind as rounded boulders with a thin coating of smooth lava on the surface. When an eruption ends, lava drains from the tubes, which slowly cool. Many big collapses in the tube system happen during this time, within just a few days of the lava flow ending. Once they are cooled, collapsed parts of the tubes often make moist, protected areas where ferns and mosses can grow. They can carry water or even ice year-round. Lava tubes were recognized long ago as valuable resources for people crossing or even living in harsh volcanic landscapes. From ancient explorers to modern scientists, the intense power and strange beauty of erupting volcanoes and flowing lava continue to capture our imagination and excite our sense of exploration.